Hi, I'm Frank Lamb, and welcome to this episode of Mastering the Machine from the Automation Academy for September 3rd, 2021. Today's guest was Jordan Humphreys, a recruiter, and we discussed the state of the industrial automation jobs field and some of the things that he's working on in this career area and recruiting. Hope you enjoy it. This is a webinar from the Automation Academy, and I call it Mastering the Machine. I've been doing these since the beginning of 2021 as part of my Automation Academy membership group. And today's guest, as you can see here, is Jordan Humphreys, and this is his tagline from his LinkedIn profile: the home for recruiting industrial automation talent, controls, PLC, SCADA, robotics, MES, OT, ICS, and IIoT, which of course now about half of those terms are pretty new. So defining things is a big part of what I do at the Automation Academy, make lists of things and at least let people know what they are, sometimes do little articles on them. What is this? I created a document back in about 2013 that it's actually turned into a lead magnet. People download it, and I, get their email address and send them emails and that sort of thing. This was on specification of machinery, which at the time I worked for a company called Wright Industries and learned a lot about how really large companies specify really large systems. So this document was about that. And then I named this thing, this presentation after it at the Automation Academy, because some of the guys in the Automation Academy used to, I had a lot of PLC programming courses on there, things like that. And I was getting feedback from people that, hey, everybody has PLC courses, but really, one of the reasons we joined is because you can give us some insight into systems integration and machine building. So I kind of changed my focus at that time and have been making more videos on other things. And that's where this came from. I see Lavelle Chase showing up there. That's cool. Today's topic is the current state of the automation jobs market and what skills might be in a demand, things like that. Jordan is really in tune with a lot of this stuff. He does recruiting full time. I did get some just general information here. Of course, we're going through a pandemic right now, so the employment market's in a bit of a turmoil over the last year and a half or so, right? We went into a really big unemployment thing, 10% unemployment at one point, and it's back down to something more reasonable now, 5-point-something%, and it looks like they added jobs in July. But of course, I also hear about people having great quit outs, where everybody quits and leaves, a burger joint in limbo or something like that. So, Jordan, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about the overall job market and then specifically, automation and technical jobs. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, as you said, my niche is industrial automation. Got connections overseas, but I do all my business in the US. So I concentrate on the niche, but I'm also a recruiter, and I keep my eye out on what's happening overall in the economy, jobs. So just to try to keep in tune with what's going on out there. So great question. You don't necessarily have to. But it's still a good idea to entertain and have some conversations with recruiters, as they can give you the best advice, skills, negotiations, job offers, and the like. But like I said, my recruiter friends on the outside, they're having a very hard time trying to find candidates and get them into to their employers that they have contracts with. So outside of the market of industrial automation, there's a lot of jobs still out there. There's a lot of people, obviously looking at different opportunities to better themselves. Either, maybe it's remote, maybe it's a better location, maybe it's more money, a combination of all of them. So Obviously, what I see outside of our market is a lot of the service industries, especially in food. That's the biggest one that I've seen. There's fast food restaurants or just family casual restaurants, sit down restaurants. They're always looking. And the people that are serving, they don't have enough servers. So they don't have all their tables out. That's the big one that I've seen. Second biggest one I would still say is skilled trades. And that's not too much of a surprise. Hard one to fill because there's not enough. And when I say skilled trades, and I'm sticking to manufacturing, machine operators, CNC machinists, welders, electricians, things like that. It's hard to find those kinds of people. It's very competitive. They jump around a lot, even for $1, $2. So that market was a little unstable to begin with. Now you add on to the pandemic, and it's just become a little bit harder. So everybody's trying to find those people to hire, to operate their machines, to operate their manufacturing processes, and not only hire them, but try to retain them. And overall, I would just say, not to try to get too much into it, but we need to do a better job infrastructure at a young education point to share those opportunities of the skilled trades. College is not the end all be all for everybody. And we need to get that back into shop class and high school and learning about these trades so that, people that don't want to go to college and are handy, mechanical thinking, engineers kind of thinking, they can get right out of high school or go into a trade school and get into something and start working and get paid, as apprentice. So yeah, outside market, very, very hot right now. But as far as inside industrial automation and ours, it's pretty much, I would say it's kind of the same. It's always in demand. Even before COVID, it's in demand. There's not enough talent out there. But now I would say it's probably going to go up. We're reaching a point to where there's not much talent out there as far as whether you're an end user at a factory, whether you're a system integrator, a consultancy, there's just not that many people out there. And most of what people want in industrial automation, they've got a job description. They've got, I need a controls engineer that does Allen Bradley PLCs from scratch and these particular Rockwell softwares. I need specific skills because these specific skills are what we do for our customers. And if you know Siemens, but not Allen Bradley, well, it's going to take me a lot longer to get you up to workflows on and how to program in Allen Bradley. And that's going to cost time for me and the customer. So I want somebody that can hit the ground running. And I get that. And I would love to give that to you. Where we're coming at to a point now is it's automation and controls is becoming more and more popular. We're expected to double this industry in revenue by the end of 2023. So there's a lot of growth about to happen. But there's just not people out there. If you've got, you need somebody with 5 years experience, can program from scratch, has done this, has done that. I'll go out there and try to find it for you. But it's not going to be somebody that's unemployed. So we have to go after passive talent. And that passive talent already has spent this year looking at their options, either switch to job. So if they have, if somebody I'm looking at passive talent that just started a job this year, I'm more than likely not going to go after them because they just started a job. They don't even know how it's going yet. Okay. So what I want to tell my clients and everybody that's going to be hiring is be more flexible. Somebody with specific skills, motion control, SCADA, and you need these platforms. Well, that might not be able to get that out there and recruit for that. So take somebody that has different skills or wants to learn these types of skills and make that hire and invest that time into them to teach them what you do for your customers, get them up to speed and keep them. That's your best bet right now. It may not be the best answer in what you're looking for, but right now that's the best way to go.
Yeah, I think here in Middle Tennessee, we have a lot of contractors, people that are very good, PLC programmers, have a lot of experience, most of them came out of the machine building industry in this area. We have probably, I don't know, at least 8 to 10 pretty good size, custom machine builders in the area. And people worked for them for a while, and they were used to writing original programs for custom machinery. And then they went out on their own. But just yesterday, a good friend of mine, Kelly Slow, who's been on here, he said he's at JR Automation. And I said, JR, at least when they were Wright Industries, didn't used to hire people directly. They always went through some kind of a recruiter or something. And he said, yeah, that's true now too, maybe because of insurance or whatever, but he got this job through a talent agency of some kind. Do you do that too, or do you mostly try to find people permanent jobs?
So most of what I have done since I built this network and going out on my own has been permanent placement. Now the contract side it's a puzzle I'm still trying to figure out. It's not as easy. We could spend, an hour talking just about this. But I'll try to cliff note it is, there's a lot of controls engineers that have done that. They're working at a system integrator, and then they're like, you know what, I want to go out on my own. I see what, the bill rates are, and I can do this, and I can have my own freedom. And then they go out there and they do that, and they're kind of on their own. But it's kind of funny, some of them start their own business and they're successful at it, but then a new problem comes in to scale up. I've got customers that are asking me to do this, to do that. And then it's like, okay, well, now I need to scale. And then that becomes their own problem as well. Some people don't know how to scale. Some people don't want to scale. And then there's other people that want to scale, and they're doing it very well. And they're starting to build their own kind of system integrator, small system integrator, if you will. So getting back to the question, the automation community is still very tight knit. You've developed your own networks even off of LinkedIn, the old fashioned way. I worked for somebody, I shook their hands, looked them in the eye, and I know them, they know me. So a lot of that is, word of mouth. I finished up a job and now I'm looking for something else, and I call my network and I get something else. So that's happening as well. Now on the contract side, I can obviously do that. Where I'm going to have more success is working with end users at the plant level. With me working with system integrators, there's definitely a need for some contract every now and then, but the margins are where it's tough, because they've already sold their end user a bill rate. Let's say it's 125. I have to work within that margin. So I have to find the talent. What am I going to pay them? And then I use a employer of record service that does all my back end administration, insurance and all that. So they take a certain percentage. It doesn't usually work out with system integrators with the margins. Sometimes we can, work deals and then do that. Most of the time, and that's what I'm trying to do. So yes, we are working on that. And yes, we do that. What I'm trying to find is the right fit, where I fit. Where I can provide that contract work that allows the contractor to make what he or she needs, right? If they're going to go out, here's the scope of work, I need $80 an hour. I don't want to make the margins work where it's like, okay, Mr. Contractor, I know you want 80, but I can only pay you 60. That's the only way this is going to work. Well, I'm shortchanging him 20 an hour, and I don't want to do that. Whatever the contractor needs to make, I want them to make that. So that's where it gets a little bit, we have to work within the margins, but contract work is definitely out there. I do it, and it is developing. But yes, to answer your question, I have spent most of my time on permanent hires.
Okay. Do you, a lot of the people that you interviewed, do the companies require them to have their own software or, contractor type stuff, or in most cases the larger companies all have their own licenses and things, but.
Yeah, most of the time the licenses will be taken care of by the end user. The system integrator has one. But there are, I've ran into a few opportunities where we would need to provide the license, which we can do that. just you and I both know if I got to buy a license, those aren't cheap, and I'm going to have to pass that cost on to the end user. But again, if it's a 3-month project and I got to buy a license from Rockwell, well, they're probably going to sell me a year license, and I've got to pass that year license on in a 3-month because I only need it for 3 months most likely. But most of the time they have their own licenses and hardware to use.
Yeah. This splash screen I put up, I just kind of quickly looked yesterday, what skills are in demand, right? And what I found interesting was these terms, none of them, what's missing, right? There's not a lot in here about OT stuff, right? PLC programming, HMI programming, maintenance type manufacturing engineer, jobs, things like that. It was all kind of new stuff, cybersecurity, cloud architect, machine learning, more or less IIoT type skills. And I think these were the top 10 or 12, right? I think they had a list of 25, and I didn't see anywhere on there your standard, electrical engineering. And like you said, a lot of what's in demand around here is some trade skills, or possibly a combination where people can, they can program a little bit, they can troubleshoot, but they can also work with their hands and do some wiring and some of the other things that come with it. Didn't see mechanical anything, right? I saw all high-tech jobs, no mechanical design. Didn't see a lot of SolidWorks or, AutoCAD skills requirements or whatever. So,
well, yeah, and to extrapolate on that, Frank, the automation and controls industry is kind of sheltered. We're kind of the secret, and that's becoming more and more, with COVID, that really helped us, pushing digital transformations, putting this kind of technology out on the forefront. And like I said before, this industry is going to double, and by the end of 2023. And like you said, I can't go to school. I'm going to stumble upon automation or control. And this is the career I want to do, but there's nobody out there coming into high schools or colleges and saying, hey, we need automation and controls people. You can use these object-oriented OOP languages to do cool things in manufacturing. TOT, what does that mean? And definitions. I mean, we don't even have that defined within our own space. OT can mean, people, that's what I first thought was networking. It was all just networking. But then when you take a look at OT and holistically, operational technology, anything out on that plant floor that is operational and uses technology is under OT. That's PLCs, your SCADA, your edge devices, and all of that. So we need to come together and standardize a lot of things and then get those things pushed out there so that we can start attracting the next generation. We can start filling the talent gaps.
Yeah, I did make, and I offered this, I think, a couple of episodes of this show ago. I did make a list of terms, right, related to IT, OT, digital transformation. It's now grown to, I want to say, almost 20 pages worth of just odd definitions and things. So for anybody that watches this on YouTube, if you shoot me an email or send me a message, I will send you that list. So a lot of the things that they have here, right? We know what a network administrator is or an IT manager, but now on the plant floor, right? Like you said, controls engineers have to know IT to some degree. You definitely have to know, switches and routers and a lot of IP stuff, or, EtherCAT, right? That's one of the big things for motion control. So configuring all that, there seems to be a lot more of a blend. Yeah.
Absolutely. And the control, the automation guys already kind of had that IT, going into it, but the controls guys are definitely starting to come over more about IT. And I would tell them, dive into that as much as you can. It's only going to make you better. Don't put yourself in a box. I'm just a controls engineer. I only do ladder logic, and it's only on this Allen Bradley program. No. Learn more. Make yourself more dangerous in a good way.
Yeah. Learning is a big part of it. So another question I had for you, what else do you do besides go and hunt down talent? Do you qualify people at all? Like somebody says they're, I've been in controls engineering for a long time. you'll ask them maybe what platforms they know and things, but how deep do you have to dig to maybe even verify some of the things that are on their resumes?
Great question. Myself, I'm not at this point, but I would like to be a controls or automation engineer, do some projects, know what I'm talking about. So that way, when I see Frank Lamb is looking for a job and I see his resume and I have a controls engineer opening, I see PLC and controls on his resume, I'm just going to call him and say, hey, here's my job. Do you want this? You do? Okay, great. I'm going to submit you. There's no qualification in there at all. I just saw his resume. I'm going to take his word for it, and here it goes. Now, me being the recruiter, and I want to be more of the engineer, when they say, when I first started out, they need to know PLCs. Okay, so I'm going to call Frank. I say, Frank, and obviously you've been a controls engineer for 20 years on your resume. I'm going to say, do you know what a PLC is? And you're going to laugh and want to hang up, right? I don't want to be that guy. So yeah, I want to know, okay, you've used Allen Bradley. Okay, what kind of software? Are you doing ladder logic, function blocks, structured text? Have you done any design work? Have you done any of the schematics, blueprints, bill of materials? Are you integrating with customers, consulting with customers? So that's what I try to do, to dig in there. I am not an engineer. I am not your hiring manager who's been, like yourself, who's been through the weeds, knows how to qualify better, right? I'm going to go through those skills and ask Frank what you've done as best to my knowledge. I'm going to qualify as best as I can. Every day that I do this, I get a little bit better. So yes, I do qualify as much as I can so that I don't send somebody, hey, here's somebody that knows PLCs for 5 years. I think he's good for your job. When, yeah, he might have done some mods on a maintenance line and knows how to troubleshoot a little bit to the card level, but he's not going to sit down and start programming from scratch for you. I want to be able to delineate that. And that also helps with the customer. I'll go to the hiring manager, for instance. If you're the hiring manager, Frank, and you say, hey, I want somebody with 5 years of experience in PLCs, preferably Allen Bradley. Okay, what does that mean, Frank? In 5 years, what do you expect someone to know? Can they program from scratch? Can they do it in ladder logic? Can they do it in this? What if a Siemens comes up? Is this a programmer that's going to go, oh, it's Siemens, it's just different nomenclature, a couple of different keys, I'll get through it, I'll learn it real quick. Or, whoa, that's Siemens, that's a different thing, I can't touch it. I try to differentiate those things so that way I know what the hiring manager is looking for, and I can have a strong enough conversation with the candidate that those two things line up enough that I say, hey, you guys need to talk. You guys need to have a conversation. I think there's enough here that we can go forward.
Yeah. Even within those brands that you've mentioned. So for instance, Allen Bradley, you get a guy that says he's an Allen Bradley programmer, but he's worked with PLC 5s and slicks his whole life, right? Or maybe some Micrologics, completely different platform than Control-Logics. And then even Control-Logics, the older Control-Logics and the newer Control-Logics are a bit different. Siemens, sure. Exact same thing, right? Step 7, which is the older platform, is actually harder than the newer platform. So TIA Portal, right? TIA Portal is very user-friendly, very object-oriented, tag-based. You get into the old Siemens, all of a sudden, there's all kinds of data types, and half your program is in a statement list. And so asking somebody, do you know statement lists specifically, right? Because if the equipment came from Europe, it's very likely to have a lot of statement lists in it. For those that don't know it, there are places like myself here that do training on that, specifically on the older programming languages and the older platforms. So there are ways to brush up. Not something I would want to, if somebody didn't know it at all, be thrown into something and learn on the job, because it's probably going to take you more than just a few weeks to pick up on a completely different language like that,
Sure, absolutely. And I'm glad that you have services out there, and there's some other people as well that offer that training. We need to get that out there more. let other people know that, especially end users, maintenance managers, engineering managers, for that exact thing, right? I was like, I need these guys to be trained. We've got some new technology coming, whatever the reason is. I want them to be better, but I don't have the time to go out there and teach them this. I don't, so is there, Frank Lamb, the Automation Academy, and this is exactly what I'm looking for. And it's a good way to get the training out there and build up our workforce. So I'm glad that you're doing that. It's much, much needed.
Yeah. How often do hiring managers tell you in detail what they need? How much do they know about what's required on the plant floor as far as languages and platforms and other things like machine vision, right? Do they go and collect that information from people in their own company, or do sometimes they just don't know and they just need to fill a slot?
Yeah, another great question. Love your questions today, Frank. It depends on the client and the relationship. Smaller SIs, I'm probably talking with the CEO or the owner or somebody that's a VP, and I have that access. Well, who's the actual manager that's going to, it's Frank. Okay, can I talk with Frank? Yeah, absolutely. Great. Frank, I see your job description here. What do you really need? Well, I'm looking for this, and that's great. Now I can ask my candidates about this and give you a better fit. That's what I'm always looking for, the hiring manager relationship. That's not always possible. Bigger companies, they say, hey, you're going to deal with HR. You're not having access to our hiring managers. You're going to talk to HR. If you need something, tell them, and they'll ask. Okay, all right. And sometimes, that's not the best way. Direct communication is always going to be the best way. I'm going to get the fastest results. If I got to go through HR, I've got to go through my HR contact, and then they've got to email their hiring manager contact. And how quick is he going to check that email? And how quick is he going to give a response? Then how quick is the HR person going to get that response and get it back to me? Time is money. Time kills all deals. So if that takes a couple of days where I'm just sitting here like waiting on an answer, that's costing you time and money. So I always like to get that first line, who's actually going to be managing them, right? And who knows it. Now, sometimes, most of the time in our industry, the manager has come from having his hands dirty. He knows, what to say. Sometimes, yeah, we can be like, it's Cognex. That's the vision. We just need someone with Cognex. All right, I'll look for Cognex experience. Sometimes they'll be like, it doesn't matter. We use Cognex, but Keyence we can also use. So sometimes it depends. I want to get as detailed as I can, but it just depends on who I'm working with, as many details as I can get out. The more details that I get, the better fit that you're going to have.
Do you ever do things like go talk to vendors? So for instance, the Allen Bradley vendor or your local Cognex vendor or robot vendor to see if they know people that are out there, using their products that are looking for work?
I do every now and then, not as much as others, with hiring managers, targeted people that I'm looking for, but I do have a lot of them as connections, and they'll see posts or I'll see their posts and talk with them a little bit. Vision is one of those that I haven't done. A lot of my recs have included it. Maybe about 25 to 30% have done some type of vision. So I haven't developed that huge need for it yet. Now vision's coming along. It's in certain sectors. They use it more. Great technology. I think some of the stuff that they do is absolutely amazing. But yeah, that's what I would say. It's just not, maybe 25 to 30%. And that could be who I work with, right? I just work with people that don't do vision as much. Whereas if you talk to another person that has a book of business like me, they might do all vision. And where it would behoove them to have those contacts, talk with those people a lot more. Yes.
Yeah, of course, vision's included in a lot of robotic systems now too. Are you getting calls for specific robotic brands, say GE Fanuc, or obscure brands, Adept or or something like
Yeah.
that, which I think was bought by Omron anyway, which is now, I guess it's Omron's robots. But do you get that?
Yep. Most of it's the big ones: ABB, KUKA, Fanuc, Motoman, some Universal robots. Robotics is not something that I do robotics, but most of it is in controls and automation. I've done a lot in food and beverage. It doesn't utilize robotics as much, but due to COVID, we're starting to look into that. Very exciting. We'll see, how that comes about. But yeah, mostly on robotics. The main three you will see every now and then, are like, oh, I've got this, and it's like, oh, what is this? I haven't even heard of it. Another big player that is building is very impressive. Not a lot of people know about them here in the US yet, but I think it was 2017 or 2018, ABB bought B&R, and they're integrating together. There's one company in the US that went out and hired all the B&R talent a couple years ago, and they pretty much, if you're going to do anything ABB, robotics, and B&R, I know who you should talk to. There's one company, but that's one I would look at the future. B&R, industrial automation, over from Europe. They've done really well, and with ABB bought them, and they're bringing them over here. That's a big one to look at. But as far as robotics, yes, I would say, sticking with the main three: KUKA, Fanuc, and what's the other one I just said?
Motoman?
Motoman. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I know B&R had a lot of trainings up in the Chicago area. They were promoting their products and things. I did not know they were bought by ABB, which is an interesting development. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, B&R has been around for a long time. Here in Tennessee, there's a lot of it used over in East Tennessee when I was running the machine building company, and people would sometimes call me about that. Do you have expertise in this? Well, sometimes you just have to say, no, not really, but I know German PLCs, and maybe I can help you out. Let me come in and take a look at it. But a lot of times I had to refer them to other people. Yeah.
Yep. But that's definitely, keep your eye out for them, B&R.
Yeah, interestingly enough, they were one of the ones that have a group called the Automation Academy.
Yeah, do they?
Yeah, neither one of us have formally trademarked it. The actual people who trademarked Automation Academy are Business Automation. It's like more of the Excel spreadsheets and ERP system kind of stuff. Yeah. So, but yeah, that's kind of one of the reasons I know more about them. They've asked that question. Hey, you're using the name Automation Academy, and it's like, well, neither one of us really have it trademarked, right? So throwing it out there.
I love it.
So you mentioned a employer record service. Is that like a database that you have to use that you qualify people with, or how does that work?
So basically, some of the bigger box, big industry recruiters, let's say Aerotech, Kelly, right? They're big enough to where they have money coming in, and they can bankroll their own payroll. They can buy their own insurance, and do all the back office stuff, right? They've got the infrastructure. Me, I don't have that. So I use an EOR, which employer of record, and they are my contract. They basically are the employer. They will hire that person through my company, through JMH Talent. So they hold all of the insurance, the liability. They do all of the paperwork, the taxes, all of that. So for their services, they take a certain percentage of my GP. So let's just say, for instance, I've got somebody contracted out at their pay rate's $50 an hour. My bill rate is $80. So that leaves me $30 an hour of gross profit. The EOR service is going to come in for all the work that they do. They're going to take a certain percentage of my GP. So of that $30 that I'm making an hour, they might take, depending on the situation, $10 to $15 of that $30 an hour. So where I get that profit, the $15 comes to me and my company to do with it, and then they take their percentage for what the services that they render. So the point of that being, for smaller companies like myself, you can use an EOR, you just pay them, but they handle everything for you. And then obviously if you want to scale up and you make enough money, you put it back. Now I can invest that into my own infrastructure. And I don't have to use an EOR service. I can set it up for myself and I can make more of that GP over the long haul. But I have to have the capital to keep it up and running.
So yeah, Aerotech, you mentioned them. They're big around here, but they were notorious from the contractor standpoint of not paying enough for most of the good contractors to use them. But it sounds like you negotiate a little more. So it depends on what the customer wants, right? Your employer, if they're willing to pay something, then you can go find somebody of a little higher talent,
Oh, absolutely. I can find you higher talent right now on a contract basis, but do you want to pay $150 to $200 an hour?
Yeah.
And I can work on mine, my GP, right? I can do some things here and there. Well, and like going back to our earlier. So yeah, that's the conversation I have. I said, Frank's available, but he's going to cost you $150 to $200 an hour in order for him to come on site, for me to kind of project manage, to make sure everything's going right, to do all the back office stuff, insurance and everything. Here's what it's going to cost you. Ooh, yeah, I don't know if I want. Okay, that's fine. You don't have to use Frank. We can use somebody else over here that fits your budget, but it's not going to fit your scope of work. It's not going to give you what you need. Yeah. So it all goes back to, again, if you have the money, I forget what I'm trying to say, but fast and easy and cheap, you can only have two of the three. What are you going to pay for, right?
Yeah. You mentioned the beverage industry. That's something I'm very familiar with. It's one of my only remaining customers that I do actual integration with. But there are two brands specifically there at that plant, and I think you may have heard of them. One is Seidel. And Seidel is they make, bottle blowers and all kinds of just full system for compounding juices and soda pop and all that kind of stuff. So very big in the beverage industry. They're European, and their rate is over $200 an hour, portal to portal. And they fly people from, say, Italy, right? They have people in the US, but they don't really come from the machine builder side. So if you have a very specific thing you need to troubleshoot, the first guy that's going to come in there at $200 an hour is, say, out of Atlanta, and he's going to charge you from the time he leaves his house until he gets to your plant and back. And you have no alternative because, right, that not a lot of people work on Seidel, and they don't give away their software, the program. So if you don't have the program, can't get online, right? You can get online, but if it's Siemens, you can't read it, right? It's not commented. You don't have access to the commented program. So then the next thing is they say, well, it's beyond me. They go back to Atlanta and they ship somebody over from Europe. So I know my particular customer, the cost for them is over $20,000 for a visit, right? For somebody to come in. So all of a sudden that $200 an hour for somebody here that knows that particular type of equipment might be worth it, The other one is Tetra Pak, right? Tetra Pak, what's happened is, Tetra Pak, they make the little box juices and things like that. The guys that know those machines, a lot of them now are leaving Tetra Pak. They're the technicians, the original technicians, and they go out on their own, and they can command a pretty high dollar, again, to come in and, work in your plant maybe for a few months. And that's something that it takes time to develop, right? There's no schools on it.
Definitely seen a lot of that. No. Yeah, those people learned it by the sweat of their brow, working, on the job training. They went through the headaches, the hassles, the late nights. They've done that. They've taken that sweat equity and learned it, and now they're like, like we said earlier, I'm going to go out on my own, have my freedom, my control, command, a premium dollar, and go out there and see what happens. Yep. And they can do that because there's not enough talent out there. there's options for them. And they can go to these Tetra Paks and places and say, hey, guess what? I can do that. Here's the money you're going to pay. You may not like it, but you're going to pay me because I'm going to get that thing up and running, and so you can make money again.
Yeah. So most of the people that you do recruit are for permanent hire, though.
That is correct. Yes.
Okay. And would you say, how much do you do in say automotive or machine building or any of those areas?
I would say most of mine is food and beverage right now. A little bit in oil and gas. Pharma and life sciences is another one that just boomed. Pharma, life sciences, and food and beverage. So food and beverage was COVID proof. To my big SIs, to my small SIs, they were growing like crazy. And then, the other one, pharma and life sciences. Well, why are they busting through the roof? Oh yeah, there's this so-called this pandemic, with COVID. And you see like Moderna and Pfizer, and their profits are up through the roof. Well, what are they going to do with that profit? They're going to turn it back into their company, to make more money. So those industries have just blown up, and I've gotten most of my calls for that. I have stayed mostly in that. Automotive is one I will I'm not saying I wouldn't do, but if I could take a food and beverage, oil and gas, pharma, life sciences over automotive, I'll do it all day long. And the reason is people don't like working in automotive and controls. They just don't. They get burnt out. The money's great, but they don't have a life. Yeah. And so I take those calls, and it's like, hey, I'm 25, 26, I'm married, I'm getting ready to have kids. I want a life, love working. I love the money that I earn. These guys making 150 to 200, working third shift and doing overtime, tier ones or automotive people. But they don't have life, and they get burnt out. So that's why I like to put people in a better place, right? And if I hear that coming from them in automotive, I don't want to go and put them in another automotive job. Mm-hmm. I want to give them a work-life balance. So that's where I tend to steer them towards. But yeah, for those reasons, automotive it's a tough one. But there's definitely people out there that like the automotive and want to do it and seem to stick around in it. But yeah, that would probably be my least favorite.
Yeah, you mentioned oil and gas. I'd always heard that about that. You can make a lot of money, but you can be worked to death. And it's very cyclic, right? Sometimes it's booming, and then sometimes it dips and everybody gets laid off. So
ride the wave. That's what it's all about. They've been doing that for generations out there, talking about their grandpas and their great grandfathers that were doing it. And yeah, obviously with COVID, they took a big hit. They're starting to climb back up now. Odessa, the Permian is really hitting hard. Southeast New Mexico is churning back up. So we're slowly starting to get back up there in oil and gas. They were really going to do some forward-thinking things as far as SCADA goes, some SCADA administrations and technology in oil and gas, but COVID hit just at the perfect time to nix that stuff. But now I'm starting to see a little bit of that start to pop up, which is good because I think oil and gas definitely needs it. The level of automation that they do seems to be a little bit less than other industries, not as technical. So I pull people out of O&G for that reason. The 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, or the 14 on, 7 off. I'm making good money, but the rotation's killing me. I'm working away from home. I want to get into another industry with automation and do more. I pulled out a lot of people out, doing that.
You mentioned SCADA. Would you say when people ask for requirements, are you hearing more of the newer platforms like Ignition or TatSoft, or are you hearing the old classics, Wonderware and maybe Factory Talk View? Which would you say you're getting more of a demand for?
Both are about the same, but the newer ones, like you said, Ignition and TatSoft, are going to grab more market share as we go forward. The older stuff and Wonderwares and stuff, they're still used like legacy, right? They've already been planted in there. The plant's not going to upgrade or change anytime soon. So we still need somebody that knows Wonderware, Factory Talk. Now, Factory Talk, there's been a couple of different things coming out with Rockwell, and they've been doing some decent stuff. I know Rockwell's not always and Allen Bradley's can be a curse word sometimes with the way they handle some things, but they've been doing some neat stuff there. But SCADA, yeah, I mean, forward thinking ignition is unbelievable. And what it can what it can do, and how open of a platform. You're seeing it migrated into other things. Walmart, for instance, in warehousing has really jumped on it. So platforms like Ignition, and I'm excited. I've heard a lot of cool things about TatSoft and what they're coming out with. But yeah, you see the newer stuff and just what they're capable of. That's why they're going to be used more in the smart factories, the smart automation, smart cities. More capability that it has. We're going to do more things.
One of the things I'm seeing here, you mentioned the warehousing. We're getting giant warehouses, whether it's, we've got Rooms to Go, we've got Under Armour, of course, all the Amazon facilities. They just built a giant new one here. And inside of those things are the storage and retrieval systems, often by companies like Dematic, right? So
yep.
Are you getting companies that are asking for specific brand skills like a Dematic for storage and retrieval, or not so
Nothing
much?
Specific skills, but they want to see that you've worked in that industry. AGVs are a big one as well, but the warehouse, the ASRS, retrieval systems, those are material handling's going up as well. That's another one. Like you said, Dematic, Winride, Defuku, they're doing very well. Obviously, Amazon's doing very well, and they're building, everywhere for this infrastructure. But yeah, that's the new one, right? How do we automate these processes, the logistics within the warehousing industry? How do we do this? And a lot of it's material handling. How we go here and where. Material handling is another big one. And then just a quick note on it. Kind of like automotive, there's a big need in material handling. But again, those are road warriors. Those guys are the ones that are going to be told, hey, it's 50% travel. And then, you're doing 70 to 80% travel. You're doing a lot of overtime. And again, you're making a lot of money. You're doing a lot of cool things. But you got to be ready to travel. You got to be ready to be on the road, and kind of risk averse from being burnt out.
Yeah, I joked a little bit yesterday about, you're going to help me find a job. I've worked for myself for, 20 years out of my life, really. I've either run a company with employees, or now this stint about 10 years. And one of the things I've migrated to is doing less of the systems integration. But with that, right, I used to do a lot of training and travel, and I do miss the travel. The problem is, like, you get into systems integration and contracting, and some of the travel is 6 months continuous, back and forth to the same place. And that was the thing that burnt me out. It's not the 1 week at a time and 2 week at a time things. I love those. I would take those all day long, right? But the ones where once you get started, you have to finish. And it's 6 months or it's 9 months, right? Machine building or systems integration is often that way. You have to be there at the start, and you have to be there through completion. And during that time, right, especially at the end, it's just really, really heavy slogging. So
yeah, and I'm glad you said that, because we're forward-thinking system integrators and automation companies are paying attention to that. One of my best client, I love them. They're going to say 30% travel is your average. Sometimes, depending, and we all know this in the automation industry and controls, especially SIs, sometimes it doesn't go as the plan. You need to stay a couple extra days. Sometimes the customer adds something on. You need to stay another week, right? So your average is going to be 30%. Last year, they traveled 20%. So it was below that. I'm going to give you an average of 30, but I'm not going to let you go over 40. I want you to have a work-life balance. Also, here's the thing that we do. They've built a remote team, and they did this before the pandemic. We hired somebody in the spring. Again, 30% travel. It's remote. And here's what his travel schedule was. You're going to be at home for the first year programming. Okay. You're going to be working on this project. It's a big project at home for a year. After that year, the commission goes, and it's going to be about a 5-month commission, but you're not going to be there for 5 months. We're going to send you out there for a couple of weeks up to a month. We're going to keep you at that 30% travel rate. And then when you've reached that quota, you're coming back home, and we're going to put somebody else out there. We're going to rotate you. You might have to go back out there another month or 2 months later, but you're not going to, like you said, I'm not going to stick you out there for 4 to 6 months, and we'll see you back home when it's done.
Right.
So that, when you can give people, they know they're going to travel, but when you can organize it and keep it structured like that, it goes so much further.
So you sound like you do keep up with people that you find employment somewhere. You keep up with them after they've got the job, and you check in with them, and you kind of monitor how they're doing. Yeah,
absolutely. One of my best clients, I've placed almost 15 people there, and I keep track with those people to know what's going on at that place, right? Everything that you were sold to, either if it was sold to me and I tried to sell it to you in recruiting, or the company on their interviews, they were telling you, oh, we do this, we do that. I check in, I say, hey, is that true? And this client, that's why they're my best client. Every one of them loves it. Everything that's been sold to them has been delivered. So that's why I like to keep up. And I say, great, awesome. And they make it so easy to recruit for them. But that's, I also like to stay in touch with them and say, hey, how's it going? Oh, really? Keep your pulse. What's going on with your client? That way I know if something's kind of going wrong. Wow, 6 people I've placed here in the last year, they've all had this negative thing to say. I can go to my contacts, and say, hey, I'm bringing up if you didn't know about this, this is what's going on in your plant. That's my client. I want what's best for them. I'm not just here to, hey, here, hire this person and cut me a check and call me again when you need it. I'm looking out for your best interests. And, so I do that for my clients, and I also do that for my candidates and people that I place. If there's something going on, maybe I can go to that place and say, hey, can we work this out and make it happier for them? Great. And if not, well, then let's work through and place them somewhere else, because it's going to be better for them and better for you overall. So I like to be that little consultative, continuous consultation, if you will.
Yeah. Would you say your work is evenly distributed across the United States, or is it mostly geographically in certain areas?
Yeah, I would say I'm spread out. It was kind of funny the first year that I did business on my own. I'm based in Indianapolis, Indiana, and I didn't have any Indiana customers. I didn't have any Indiana clients. They were in Texas, California, the Dakotas, New England area, Florida, Midwest, Tennessee, Kentucky. So yeah, very, very well spread out.
Do you ever get requests from overseas to help them find a job? I bet it's a lot.
Yeah, when I started this network, I was connecting with pretty much anybody in industrial automation, wherever their location was. Unfortunately, a lot of them in India and Middle East, they've got great backgrounds, experience. A lot of them come over here for their masters and want to work while they're over here. Unfortunately, we're just not, immigration-wise, we're just not set up to utilize that talent. It's hard. These people have masters and they're able to work on contract through OPT, but employers are weary of using them and the costs that are associated with them. And then even if you want to take one of those that have their masters over here and put them in an H-1B process, well, that's going to cost your company a lot of money. And it's a lottery. You don't even know if it's going to go through or not. And if you do go through, you get your guy or gal H-1B, you've sunk a lot of cost into them and you want to keep them there. But while their H-1B is active, there's nothing preventing them from going to another company that will transfer their H-1B. And their H-1B to transfer is a lot cheaper than to get their H-1B. So right there, it's like, I don't want to use it because I could get, left high and dry. Then you have a lot of people over in India. And obviously as a recruiter in here, I want to connect with me all the time. But unfortunately, I haven't been able to help one of them out in my little 3.5 years of doing this in recruiting. Just because of those things I mentioned. And the people from India, and what I try to tell people from other countries, I cannot help you until you're authorized to work in the US and you're in the United States. So a lot of people from India they'll if they see an open role, they'll say, hey, please look at my profile. I'm interested. I can't do anything. If I took your profile and I put it to my client, they'd say, well, where's this person? I say, India. Well, do they even have sponsorship? Do they have a visa to get over here? No. Well, so that's the hard process. I got to tell them, somehow you've got to find a way to get over here before I can help you. So it's an unfortunate situation. There's a lot of people over there with education and a little bit of experience, and they're looking for experience. And India is just not set up enough to hire all these people with their infrastructure. So naturally, they're going to come over here looking for opportunities, but we're just not set up to give them. And we could use their talent. That's the sad part, Frank. We could use that talent, but we're just not set up to use it immigration-wise in government.
Now, how about the opposite? Do you get people from other countries looking for workers in your area that are willing to, for instance, base in the United States, but travel internationally and work for a foreign company?
Not really, no. No, it's pretty much sorry, my 2-year-old in the background. It's pretty much the inverse, right? Everybody's trying to get over here and work. A lot of even system integrators in other countries looking for remote work that they can do over here, and that kind of thing. And that's another thing we could bring up to the U.S. To these people that are doing the jobs and wanting to hire is, there's people off-site, off of the country, that have the skills and can do this remotely. I know that they can't fly over here and do some implementation. We can look at other options for that. The problem with that is, how do the fear of the unknown, how do I work with somebody across the globe in a different time zone that may not speak my language, or speaks my language kind of hit or miss? They're writing all their instructions in Italian or Portuguese or, German. Do they know English? We're on different time zones. Does my company, do I operate my company in the US and the way we work, does that align with how they do it over there? Are we going to work together well? So you roll into those issues. And, that's what my business partner and I through Indussel are working on, trying to overcome those objections, because we've got some really great overseas people. Again, ignition. We've got 11 gold certified ignition developers that are ready to do some great work over here in the US. They've got a great portfolio of work that they've done in their country.
So you're working from home. Is that where do you have an office anywhere, or do you mostly work out of your house then?
Out of my house. Getting into a business talk again, I worked for a boutique firm that rented space. But we're a job where we're tailored for remote working. We don't need to be in an office next to each other. A lot of times it's not beneficial. We're talking over one another, and it's like this and that. You're cramped in a tiny space, and you're renting, right? So that's a cost that just, like, I don't get anything back from that. And if we don't need an office, well, I'm going to go home and I'm going to work from home. I've got internet there. I've got all my hardware. I can talk. I can go in my back room. I can go outside with my earbuds if it's quiet. It's just so much easier, right? Now, if I scale and I wanted to hire more people and go into other lines of recruiting, would I look at buying some real estate? Yes, because then again, I'm buying some real estate, and I'm getting something back. It's an investment. 20 years down the line, I want to sell it. Well, I can make some money off of that instead of just throwing it away.
Yeah,
I try to keep my I try to keep my overhead as low as I can, and it's worked out very, very well for me.
Yeah, I did that last year. I rented for about 3 years, and then a tornado came through and wiped my facility out, and worked out of my house for about 4 months. But I don't have good internet from home, and I really need it. So I went and bought an old house, and that's where I am right now. This is an old house, and I can teach up to 4 people, but I have high-speed internet here, which is that's the strong point about this area. That's why I can't really work out of the house. Yeah. Okay, well, we're up against the end of the hour here. I appreciate it. You informed me on a lot of things I did not know about, the recruiting industry and how people, qualify people for jobs and things like that. Do you ever have to meet people in person, or is it all pretty much virtual now?
It's pretty much all virtual. Again, if I'm working on a position in LA, I'm talking to somebody in LA, or if it's remote, I might be talking to somebody in Oklahoma. Now, where the meetings come are the candidate and the company. They're usually going to do it in person and get to know each other. Yeah. But yes, local candidates, in Indianapolis, yes, I've definitely, met them for a drink or something, interacted with them. Love getting out there, visiting people.
Most of well, I've only worked for a couple places outside of working for myself, but the last one, which was Wright Industries, I had 5 different people interview me. It was from the technical side, it was from the human resources side, the management side, right? I think even I forget, one of the guys was maybe the service department had to interview you, even though it was a project engineer type job. So I think that's common nowadays, especially in skilled positions.
Let me ask you a question, if you've got time.
Sure.
What was your opinion on that process of being interviewed 5 different times?
I would say it could have been probably 3 people would have been sufficient. I honestly don't know that the human resources person was necessary. They needed to know my technical qualifications for sure. I think management was probably as easy to judge my personality as the human resources person was. That's a lot of times what people are looking for is a fit. So management, in this case, it was I think the guy who ran the whole facility, John Best at the time, he was like the local president and the controls engineering manager. And between the two of them, I want to say they probably accomplished everything that a human resources person would have accomplished as far as asking questions. Are you going to be a good fit, for here? So 5 was a bit excessive. That was my opinion. But for instance, you had to sit down at Wright Industries and write a program. You actually had to spend a couple hours putting together something that, ran an imitation machine, if you want to put it that. And I thought that was useful because if somebody's blowing smoke, they're gonna put the comments in there and they're gonna write faults and alarms and the structured programming, and you can tell a lot about somebody when you do that.
I've worked for some SIs that had, hey, here's an RS Logix license, build me out, give them a real easy task, gives you an hour and it's all timed. Build out a little program for me, kind of show me what you're doing. And it's amazing how many people couldn't even open that up.
That's right.
And it was like, if you can't even open this up, we're not talking to you anymore. Or they could monitor, they give you 1 hour to do the test, and they could monitor when you logged in and logged off. So some people would log in for 15 minutes, come back an hour later, do another 30 minutes. They were Googling stuff, right? They come in. And so it was like, no. And then you give it to some people, no problems getting it, no problems doing it, no problem sending it. And then it was like, okay, yeah, this person knows what they're doing. So it's a good litmus test. But you got to be careful in doing those things. Again, time, right? You want to make sure it's a fast process. And that's what I wanted to ask you, Frank. You interviewed 5 different times. How long was that process from first interview to the end interview?
All in the same day.
It was same day.
Yeah. So in my case, okay. The guy who was my boss, he was the controls engineering manager at the time. We had known each other for probably 15 years. He knew of my company. So I was already being hired in as a senior guy which I was the only person ever hired in there as a senior guy, right? Because I'd run my own company. I think some of the other people, when they're hired in a junior position, what they do is they put them in almost a trainee position. They do CAD work to start with, and then they shadow a controls engineer, and they help with startups and things, and then they're slowly promoted into those positions. But it's 5 or 6 years before they ever get to do any actual design work, right? Decision making.
Yeah.
I think that's probably typical. Now, I have to mention Automation NTH. Don't know if you're familiar with them. They are one of the systems integrators of the year. They're here in the Nashville area, and what they do is they actually hire people, intern them straight out of school for 4 months, and then hire them full time. And the first year, they're in more or less training, working with other people, and it's exactly the reason you mentioned. They can't get the senior people, so they've started training up their own people, right? And they've grown from. My wife worked there at one point. I think they were 10 or 15 people back then, and they're now coming up on 100. They're over 90 people, and they're growing fast. So I think that's a good way to groom your own talent if you can afford the time. But they're having the same problem. They can't get people. They can't keep up with the work that they've got, right? They can't get the workers.
Yeah. But hey, if I had a hat right now, Frank, my hat would be off to Automation NTH, because that's what I've told people. That's the best way to do it right now. But you had a critical point. If you have the bandwidth, if you have the time and the money to do that, not everybody does, but get to that point, because what Automation NTH is doing, that's perfect. Not only are you grabbing them at a young age, you're going to get to train them how you want to train them, right? You're not going to pick up any bad habits from anybody else. You get to train them. And if you're doing that correctly, they're going to stay with you. This company took me out of high school or college, intern, took the time to teach me these ropes, right? Put me under mentors. This company likes me, wants me. And guess what? I want to work for this company. Yeah, so not only are you doing great, it's a two-pronged monster. First, how do we get the talent, right? Second one is, how do we retain the talent? Because if you can get the talent but can't retain it, you're gonna be getting that talent.
Yeah, there's another company that will remain unnamed that is here in Middle Tennessee that has constant turnover. And I think they have a little bit of a reputation for working people to death, and they just move on. So they're constantly looking for new people and, entry level folks. Well, it's been great talking to you. I think we'll kind of wrap it up here. Takeaways from here, trades and skills are very important, right? The automation world obviously is not very, well known when people write on the tech jobs of the future. However, like you said, I think it's doubling in the last few years, and it's becoming a very highly needed area. So I appreciate all your input on it, and we had some good conversations. And like I said, I'll chop things up here and get things on YouTube so that people can watch.
Frank, I appreciate you inviting me on here. Glad to be a part of it. It was an excellent conversation. I really appreciate the time, and your questions were excellent as well. So I would just add that, if you have any questions for me, you can, get me on LinkedIn. You can get them through Frank and Automation Academy. We're here to help and promote the industry to where it can be.
Yep, and I'll grab your information off of your LinkedIn profile and pop that up as a little splash screen here at the end. Next webinar, I don't even know when it is. I'm again on the road. I know I'm in Baltimore in 2 weeks. So September something. I'll probably have to delay a couple days because I'll be traveling that day, and I have no guest at the moment. All right. Again, on YouTube, Automatici or Automation Consulting LLC, and this will be posted there. And it was great talking to you, Jordan, and we'll catch you the next time.
Likewise. Hey, have a great Labor Day as well, Frank.
Hey, you too.